Helicopters are built to lift off from almost anywhere, but when they fail, they fall hard and fast. In this video, we're looking at 5 real helicopter crashes that ended in the most disturbing ways possible. Each story starts with a normal flight and ends in chaos, confusion, and death. These are accidents you'll never forget. It was April 10, 2025 in New York City. Agustin Escobar, an executive from Spain, had just arrived in the United States with his wife, Merce Camprobi Montal, and their 3 children, ages 4, 8, and 10. They were there to celebrate a special occasion. One of their daughters was turning 9 the next day, and to mark the trip, the family planned to explore the city and take a helicopter tour over Manhattan. They had landed in New York just hours earlier from Barcelona and booked the tour through New York Helicopter, a company that offered short sightseeing flights over the city. The plan was simple: see the skyline, the Statue of Liberty, and the George Washington Bridge from above. At 2:59 p.m., the helicopter lifted off from the Wall Street heliport with 6 people on board: Agustin, Merce, their 3 kids, and the pilot. At first, everything went smoothly. The aircraft flew along the Manhattan shoreline before heading north toward the bridge. Visibility was decent, though the weather was a bit rough. There were wind gusts up to 25 miles per hour, and light rain had started to fall. At 3:15 p.m., something went terribly wrong. The helicopter suddenly lost control near the George Washington Bridge. Witnesses said they heard a loud noise described as either a sonic boom or rapid popping sounds, and then saw the aircraft break apart mid-air. The main rotor blades had detached and the tail boom had separated from the rest of the aircraft. It fell quickly into the Hudson River, just off the coast of Jersey City near Pier 40. A video of the incident later surfaced, showing the rotor spinning away and the tail breaking off. Experts said this likely pointed to a serious mechanical failure. With the rotor gone, the helicopter had no chance of recovery. It spun violently as it dropped, with no control surfaces left to steer or slow it down. One witness said the helicopter looked like it had no wings or tail as it fell. Another saw smoke trailing from the craft as it spiraled downward. The crash was over in seconds. Emergency crews responded fast, but the outcome was devastating. All 6 people on board, Agustin, Merce, their 3 children, and the 36-year-old pilot, were confirmed dead. 4 were declared at the scene, and the other 2 passed away shortly after being taken to the hospital. Shortly before the crash, the pilot had contacted the heliport, saying he was running low on fuel and planned to return within 3 minutes. But 20 minutes later, the helicopter hadn't come back, and by then the failure had already happened. Authorities later confirmed that the helicopter had been in the air for just 16 minutes before it went down. The crash turned what was meant to be a joyful family outing into something unimaginable. Agustin Escobar was the global chief executive officer for rail infrastructure at Siemens Mobility and had worked at the company for 27 years. Merce held a leadership role at Siemens Energy. The family had planned the trip around a business visit and extended it for a short vacation. Just a few hours into that vacation, everything changed. Michael Roth, the chief executive officer of New York Helicopter, said it was the worst accident he had seen in 3 decades. He confirmed the pilot's fuel request and acknowledged that the video clearly showed the helicopter falling without its main rotor. The Federal Aviation Administration and the National Transportation Safety Board opened investigations into the crash. They were looking into mechanical issues and possible flight errors, but the cause was still being reviewed. Officials from New York and Jersey City shared condolences. Siemens also released a statement mourning the loss of their colleagues. The Escobar family had just arrived in a new city, ready to make memories. But what should have been a celebration ended before it even had the chance to begin. It was the early morning of July 23, 1982, at Indian Dunes near Saugus, California. The crew of Twilight Zone, the movie, was filming a Vietnam War scene. Vic Morrow, a 53-year-old actor, stood in a shallow river with 2 young children, 7-year-old Micah Din Lei and 6-year-old Renee Shin Yi Chen. A helicopter hovered just 24 feet above them while explosions were set to go off nearby, meant to recreate the chaos of war. Cameras began rolling around 2 a.m. earlier. Morrow had expressed concern about the scene, making a grim remark that reflected his unease. His words would soon take on a tragically prophetic weight. The helicopter was piloted by Dorsey Wingo, a former Air Force veteran. During rehearsals, it flew low, but director John Landis wanted it even lower for the actual shot. Explosions on the ground erupted as planned, but one fireball was too strong. Debris hit the helicopter's rotor, damaging its controls. The aircraft began to fall. The main rotor struck Micah and Morrow, fatally wounding both. Renee, only a few feet away, was hit by the helicopter's landing skid. The screams of Renee's mother, who had been watching nearby, broke the silence that followed. Crew members froze, unable to process what had just happened. Morrow had been trying to carry the children through the scene, shielding them. All three were killed within seconds. The crash was later linked to multiple ignored warnings. Reports indicated that Landis had acknowledged the risks shortly before the accident, but continued to push for more intense explosions, despite receiving warnings from both the pilot and the special effects team. Filming stopped immediately. An investigation began and uncovered several serious problems. The children had been hired illegally. Both were under 10 and working at night, violating California labor laws. They were also paid under the table, bypassing safety checks meant to protect young actors. The pyrotechnics had been made far more powerful than planned. The force from the blast destabilized the helicopter, which had been flying dangerously close to the ground. A scene meant to look intense on film had turned into a real-life disaster. Director John Landis, producer George Folsey Jr., special effects coordinator Paul Stewart, and pilot Dorsey Wingo were all charged with involuntary manslaughter. The trial, which lasted nearly a year, gained national attention. Many expected convictions, but in February 1987, the jury found the group not guilty. The verdict shocked many who had seen or heard the details of what happened. The victims' families later filed civil lawsuits. Renee's and Micah's parents each received $2 million settlements from Warner Bros. Vic Morrow's daughters, including actress Jennifer Jason Leigh, received $850,000. No one was held criminally responsible, but the families found some legal resolution. The tragedy led to real change in the film industry. The Federal Aviation Administration introduced new rules requiring special permits for using low-flying helicopters in movies. The Screen Actors Guild and Directors Guild of America also updated their safety policies, giving actors and crew the right to leave any set they felt was unsafe. Twilight Zone. The movie was released in June 1983. Critics called it unimpressive, and its $42 million earnings couldn't erase the weight of what had happened. For many, the film would always be tied to the accident. Vic Morrow, Micah Din Lee, and Renee Shin-Yi Chen became lasting symbols of a failure to prioritize safety. Their deaths changed how movies were made. Years later, even Steven Spielberg, who had been a producer on the film, said that no movie was worth dying for. And with that, Hollywood began to listen. It was January 2nd, 2023, on the Gold Coast of Australia. Ron and Diane Hughes, a married couple from Merseyside, England, were visiting their daughter, Jane Manns, and her family. The couple had recently tied the knot in 2021 and were in Australia for a long-awaited family reunion. That day, they planned to take a scenic helicopter ride to view the coastline. But what was supposed to be a joyful moment turned into something tragic. The helicopter they boarded was a Eurocopter EC-130, operated by SeaWorld Helicopters. Along with Ron and Diane were the pilot, Ash Jenkinson, and a passenger named Vanessa Tadros, a 36-year-old mother from Sydney. Around 2 p.m., their helicopter lifted off. At the same time, another helicopter, flown by pilot Michael James, was descending to land. Both helicopters were flying at around 250 feet when they collided midair. The blades of the aircraft struck one another, sending debris flying and filling the sky with shattered glass. Witnesses nearby described the crash as sudden and terrifying. Ron and Diane's helicopter lost its rotor and gearbox on impact, causing it to fall out of the sky and crash upside down on a sandbar. No one in that helicopter survived. Ron, Diane, Vanessa, and the pilot died at the scene. Among the wreckage was 10-year-old Nicholas Tadros, Vanessa's son. He was found critically injured but alive. A nurse who happened to be nearby used a tube to help him breathe until emergency crews arrived. Nicholas was placed in a coma due to the severity of his injuries, but eventually pulled through. Meanwhile, the second helicopter, though damaged, was able to land. Its front left section was torn apart, but Michael James managed to bring it down safely. All 5 people on board his helicopter survived, suffering only minor injuries. His ability to land the aircraft under such conditions was seen as extraordinary by those at the scene. Emergency responders arrived quickly, joined by locals who stepped in to help. The Australian Transport Safety Bureau immediately began an investigation to find out how such a crash could have happened. Early findings showed both helicopters were flying very close to each other, one going up, the other coming down. Investigators focused on how communication may have broken down between the two pilots. Michael James later said he saw the other helicopter take off and assumed it would clear his path. But after that, no further communication was made, and it appeared both pilots had misjudged the distance between them. Then came another discovery. Toxicology results showed that Ash Jenkinson, the pilot of the downed helicopter, had low levels of a banned substance in his system. While the amount wasn't considered enough to impair flight performance, some experts believed it could have still affected his decision-making. Jenkinson's family asked the public not to focus only on this, but instead look at the broader safety issues. Families of the victims were devastated. Jane Mans remembered her father saying days before the crash that he felt lucky to be alive, words that took on a painful meaning later. Vanessa Tadros' husband Simon voiced frustration about how the pilot was allowed to fly without proper checks. Nicholas Tadros faced a long recovery. Though he survived physically, the loss of his mother left a deep emotional wound. The investigation is still ongoing. SeaWorld Helicopters has since changed several safety protocols, including better communication procedures and new air traffic systems. But for the families involved, none of it can undo what happened that day. They came to create memories and left with a story marked by loss. And for everyone else, it's a reminder of how quickly things can change, even in the most ordinary moments. It was January 26, 2020 in Southern California. A Sikorsky S-76 helicopter lifted off from John Wayne Airport at 9:06 a.m., carrying 9 people. Among them were National Basketball Association icon Kobe Bryant and his 13-year-old daughter, Gianna. They were heading to a youth basketball game at the Mamba Sports Academy in Thousand Oaks. But by 9:45 a.m., the flight would end in tragedy, leaving the world in shock. Kobe Bryant was known across the globe. A 5-time National Basketball Association champion, former Most Valuable Player, and longtime Los Angeles Lakers player, he was respected for his talent and work ethic. Gianna, his second eldest daughter, shared his passion for basketball. She was a rising player herself, and the two often traveled together for games and practices. That morning, they were joined by friends, teammates, and coaches, people deeply connected by basketball. The helicopter was flown by Ara Zobayan, a skilled pilot with years of experience. He had flown celebrities before and was familiar with the route. But the weather that morning was difficult. Thick fog, light rain, and poor visibility had caused many flights to be grounded. Despite this, their helicopter continued. At 9:30 a.m. near Glendale, the helicopter entered heavy fog. Zobayan told air traffic control that he was flying too low to be seen on radar. He was told to climb an altitude, which he did. By 9:40, they were at 2,000 feet and moving fast. Visibility was still low, and Zobayan was relying on his instruments. Minutes later, the helicopter suddenly crashed into a hillside in Calabasas, around 30 miles from downtown Los Angeles. People nearby reported hearing a loud sound followed by smoke. The crash caused a fire, and all 9 people on board lost their lives immediately. The victims included Kobe and Gianna Bryant, John Kerry, and Alyssa Altobelli, Christina Mauser, Sarah and Peyton Chester, and the pilot Ara Zobayan. The investigation was difficult. The helicopter had no black box, making it harder to figure out exactly what went wrong. The medical examiner confirmed that all passengers died from severe impact injuries. Investigators from the National Transportation Safety Board, or NTSB, found that the pilot likely became disoriented in the fog. Despite his experience, he did not follow key safety guidelines and flew into dangerous weather conditions, losing track of the helicopter's position. The loss of Kobe Bryant hit hard across the world. Tributes came from fans, athletes, and public figures. Former teammate Shaquille O'Neal and current star LeBron James both expressed deep sorrow. The Lakers honored Bryant in games that followed, and fans gathered outside the arena to mourn. Gianna, known as Gigi, had a bright future. Her passing left a deep mark, especially on her teammates and family. Vanessa Bryant, Kobe's wife, spoke at their memorial, describing the deep bond between her husband and daughter. She said they belonged together even in death. The Altobelli family's loss was also heartbreaking. John was a well-known college baseball coach. His daughter Alyssa, who played basketball with Gianna, and his wife Carrie were remembered as kind and loving. Christina Mauser, a coach at Gianna's school, left behind a husband and 3 children. Sarah and Peyton Chester were remembered as a strong mother-daughter pair who brought joy wherever they went. In the aftermath, Vanessa Bryant took legal action after graphic photos from the crash site were shared without permission. In 2023, she received a $28.85 million settlement for the emotional harm it caused. Kobe and Gianna were laid to rest on February 7, 2020, in a private service. A public memorial was later held at the Staples Center. The National Basketball Association renamed its All-Star MVP award in Kobe's honor, and a statue was placed outside the arena to commemorate him. Though gone, Kobe and Gianna's impact continues. Through sports, family, and mentorship, they left behind more than memories. They left behind meaning. It was June 10, 2019, in Manhattan, New York. Tim McCormick, a 58-year-old helicopter pilot and former fire chief, was getting ready for a routine flight. He had years of flying experience and had handled many emergencies before. But that afternoon, something went terribly wrong. At 1:32 p.m., McCormick took off from the 34th Street heliport near the Hudson River. The weather was bad: thick fog, steady rain, and winds nearing 9 miles per hour. Visibility was so low that most helicopters were grounded. Still, McCormick went ahead with the flight. Soon after takeoff, witnesses saw his Augusta A109E flying unsteadily over the East River. It was veering off its intended route. Some believe McCormick was trying to avoid restricted airspace near Trump Tower, where special flight limits had been set since the presidential election. This may have forced him to change his flight path. Whatever the reason, something wasn't right. McCormick radioed a distress call shortly before the crash. While the details of that call remain unknown, it was clear he was in trouble. At 1:43 p.m., the helicopter crashed into the roof of the AXA Equitable building on 7th Avenue. The 54-story skyscraper was suddenly rocked by the impact. Debris was scattered and a fire broke out on the rooftop. Thick black smoke poured into the sky, catching the attention of people across the city. Inside the building, employees felt the shock. Shauna Farrell on the 36th floor said they heard a loud sound and then felt the building shake. Fire alarms went off and people rushed to evacuate. The exit process was surprisingly calm despite the chaos above. Outside, pedestrians and workers watched as people were led out. One restaurant hostess across the street recalled how fast the evacuation happened. She said that it was chaotic. Firefighters arrived quickly and faced a difficult task: getting water to the rooftop fire nearly 800 feet above ground. Within 30 minutes, the flames were under control. But McCormick, the only person on board, didn't survive. He was confirmed deceased soon after the crash. The wreckage was severely damaged, making it hard to identify. McCormick had spent years as the chief of the East Clinton Volunteer Fire Department. From 1994 to 2019, he led with dedication and was respected for his calm approach and strong technical skills. He was also active on social media, often sharing photos and reflections, including tributes to firefighters who died during the September 11th attacks. Despite his experience, McCormick couldn't avoid the crash that day. The National Transportation Safety Board, or NTSB, launched an investigation, focusing on the poor weather and difficult flying conditions. Experts pointed to the thick fog, rain, and wind as major factors. Flying near restricted airspace likely added to the challenge. The helicopter had been on its way to Linden, New Jersey, but mechanical trouble may have also played a part. Some believe McCormick was trying to make an emergency landing but couldn't reach a safe spot in time. This wasn't his first in-air emergency. In 2014, a bird hit the windshield of his helicopter, forcing a sudden landing. That time, he had passengers but managed to land safely with no injuries. This time, he was alone. The crash reignited concerns about helicopters flying over crowded cities like New York. While no one on the ground was hurt and the building had only minor damage, the incident led officials to reconsider flight rules. Some called for a ban on non-essential helicopter travel over Manhattan. The investigation continued, looking into weather, mechanical issues, and route restrictions. But for those who knew McCormick, the loss was deeply personal. He was more than a pilot. He was a leader and a protector. And on that day, despite everything he knew and had faced before, the sky turned against him.